And we are live, so good morning, everyone. Good afternoon, depending on where you're joining us from. My name is Jesse, and I am with Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants. For those joining us for the first time, we are all about bringing conservation, adventure, and science into classrooms around the world. And we're really excited because all February long, we are highlighting incredible women in science. We're kicking out all the men. We're spending all month long showcasing women from around the globe, over 20 countries, amazing virtual field trips to some of the coolest places in Canada, the US, and around the globe. So thank you guys so much for joining us during our very special month. So right now we've got 6 classes joining us from across North America. I'm going to give them a chance to do a bit of a hello before we get underway. So we've got Miss Vandaloo's grade 2s in Ottawa, Ontario. Hi, guys.
Say hi.
Hi, welcome in. We've got Miss Garner's grade 1s in Oak Lawn in Illinois. Hi, guys. Hey, there's so many of you. We had like the most enthusiastic kids today. I don't know, we might have a record. We've got Miss Langer's grade 3/4s in Cobourg, Ontario. Hi, guys.
Hi.
Hey.
We also have a grade 1-2 class joining us today.
We've got bringing people off the street. Let's get the whole school involved. I love it. Well, we appreciate that. We've got Miss Moreno's grade 3s in San Antonio in Texas. Hi, guys. Hey, you're so loud that like it cut out the mic. That's the best possible enthusiasm. We've got Miss Langdale's grade 1s in Fox Creek in Alberta. Hi, guys. Oh, you're right. There we go. Hey, welcome in. And we have a stuffed bear in that classroom. I know. We've confirmed the presence of a stuffed bear. Oh, no, all stuffed bears. Oh, we're inundated with stuffed bears. Okay, let's hope they don't get predatory. All right, of course, the reason you guys are all here today is for our speaker. So we are joined live by Stephanie, and she is an educator at Glacier National Park, one of the most beautiful and amazing places in the entire United States that's right on the border of Alberta. So our Alberta class might know about Glacier National Park already. And this one of the most incredible ecosystems in the world, going up through Alberta, down through the states, amazing mountains, amazing stories, amazing creatures. So Stephanie is going to share with us today a little bit about bears, grizzly bears, black bears, the differences between them, how bears adapt to and survive in their environments. And so without further ado, with the coolest presentation system I have ever seen, we are going to turn it over to Stephanie. And thank you so much for joining us today, and take it away.
Well, hello, everyone. I'm so excited to talk to you all about bears today. And like Jesse said, my name is Stephanie, and I am a park ranger here at Glacier National Park, working for the United States National Park Service. And just for some of you, since we're all calling in from different places across the US, as well as Canada, I just want to point out where we are. So we are located in northwestern Montana. So if you see where our little red star is, we're way up here. Like you mentioned, we're right by the Canadian border, actually part of Glacier National Park. We're an international peace park, so part of the park goes across the border up into Canada. And it sounds like a lot of you may be from Texas or Illinois over here and other parts of Canada. And today we're going to be focusing on something that makes this place really special here at Glacier National Park, because there are lots of different things that make this place special. We have grand mountains, we have really big lakes, but we also have really cool wildlife. We are actually one of the few places in the lower 48 United States, so everything but Alaska and Hawaii, where you can still find grizzly bears and black bears living together. So something really special and unique. And today we're going to talk a little bit about these different types of bears. We're going to talk a little bit about some of the differences between these bears, how to tell the difference between them, as well as some of the special adaptations or really parts of their body or behaviors they have that help them survive in a place like Glacier National Park. So we're going to get right into talking about the difference between these two types of bears, because when people come to visit Glacier National Park, they typically get a chance to see a bear, but their biggest question is, what bear did I see? Did I see a grizzly bear or did I see a black bear? So I'm going to teach us all some ways to tell the difference between grizzly bears and black bears. So we're going to start out talking about our grizzly bears. And for our grizzly bears, there's a few really distinct parts of their body that tell you it's a grizzly bear. Probably the easiest thing to look for a grizzly bear to know if you've seen one is to look for their shoulder hump. So you can see that on this picture we have right here, right between those shoulders for our grizzly bear, they have a big hump. And basically what that is, it's a really big muscle mass so that they can dig really well in the dirt, flip over logs, tear up logs. So it helps them dig and find food. Another thing you'll notice on a grizzly bear is the shape of their face. So our grizzly bear's face is kind of this dished in face. It's a little more squished in than a typical bear, so kind of that dished face. And then another thing is going to be the bear's ears. So our bear's ears tend to be a little bit shorter and more rounded for a grizzly. And then last but not least, the most distinguishing feature of a grizzly bear, but a feature you never ever want to use because it means you're way too close to a grizzly, if you can see this, is their claws. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to flip over to a different camera view so we can look a little bit closer at a grizzly claw. So right there, that is a grizzly bear claw. And they're typically about 2 to 4 inches long. If I were to hold my finger beside this, if we were to completely straighten that claw would be longer than my finger. And I have pretty long fingers, so that's an incredibly long claw. It also has this kind of whitish tan color to it. We'll compare this in a little bit to black bears and see how those claws might be different from our black bears. But one of those reasons that those grizzly bears have those really long claws is so that they're able to find food. Not only does that muscle mass, that shoulder hump help them find food, but also those claws really help them find food. So when you have those big claws, it helps you dig and find food. And also grizzlies have these claws because of where they evolved. So where they've lived throughout their history. So for grizzly bears, they never really lived in a forested area. So if they were ever threatened or felt like they were in danger, they didn't have an escape route of running up a tree. So instead, they grew these really nice big claws to help them defend themselves if they were ever threatened. Now, in contrast, black bears are a little bit different on some of their body features, and that has to do actually where they evolved or where they have lived throughout their history. So for our black bears, one big thing you notice by just looking at this picture here, I want you to nod your head yes or no. Does anyone see a shoulder hump on this bear? No, right? You don't see a shoulder hump. So black bears don't have that big muscle mass by their shoulders. Actually, the tallest part of a black bear's body is going to be their rump. A few other really factors that kind of distinguish the two bears apart is going to be the shape of our bear's face. So if you look at this black bear face over here, it's going to be a lot more thin and narrow. It's not that dished in face like a grizzly. It actually looks a lot like a dog's face. So if anyone has a dog, a black bear's face kind of looks like your dog's face. Also, our black bears have slightly taller, more pointed ears. So their ears tend to be a little bit more pointed on their head. And then last but not least, their claws. So I'm going to get us back to that image view again to look at their claws. So this right here is a black bear claw. It tends to be a little bit smaller. Let's put up our grizzly claw beside that. So you can see that black bear claw is a lot smaller than our grizzly claw. And also is a little bit more curved, and it's kind of black in color. So some distinguishing traits between those two claws. And why we see such a big difference between the black bear claw and the grizzly claw has to do with the fact that black bears, they evolved and really kind of in their history have lived in forested environments. So when they felt threatened, they felt unsafe, they could use those little claws to climb up trees and escape from any threats, unlike our grizzlies who didn't have that escape route of the trees themselves. So really those alone, their claws and some of their different body features are really kind of different adaptations or physical features that these bears have that help them survive and have helped them survive in the past. And a lot of times when people think of identifying these different types of bears, they think of looking for the color of their fur. So they think if they see a bear that has black fur and a bear that has brown fur, the brown fur is going to be grizzly, the black fur is going to be a black bear. Unfortunately, that's not true. Actually, most of the black bears that I've seen in Glacier National Park have not had black fur. So this right here is a picture of a black bear. You can see it kind of has this almost cinnamon brown color to it. You'll also find black bears that are this blondish color. And then of course you can find those iconic black bears in the park, but color alone is really not a good way to tell the difference between the types of bears. You want to look for those other physical features on their body, that's a much better way to tell if you've seen a black bear or a grizzly bear. And what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to test your skills at identifying our black bears and our grizzly bears. And what we're going to do is I am going to show you a picture of a bear. I want you to think about it for a minute. Is it a grizzly bear and is it a black bear? And why do you think that way? And once you have an idea, what I want you to do is I want you to hold up, if you think it's a grizzly, I want you to hold up your big old grizzly claws. If you think it's a black bear, I want you to hold up your big black bear ears. And then that'll give me an idea if you think it's a black bear or a grizzly bear. So let's see, we'll start with this bear right here. So I want you to take a minute. Once you have an idea, I want you to hold up either your grizzly claws or your black bear ears.
Oh, I see a lot of ears, I see a lot of claws. There's a bit of both. This is very exciting. Okay.
Oh yes, we're kind of seeing a variety here, aren't we?
Yeah.
Awesome. So for this bear right here, this would actually be a grizzly bear. So for all of you who held up those grizzly bear claws, awesome job. Why we know this is a grizzly bear is we have one big feature that kind of gives it away. If you look up here, the highest point on our bear's body is going to be its shoulders. So that shoulder hump, that huge muscle mass right on that bear's body. So that's kind of the big feature you can look for here. Another one is if you look at our bear, it's almost hard to see their ears because they're so small and rounded. So this bear has those tiny, small, rounded ears. Another way that we can tell it's a grizzly bear. Let's see, I've got one more for you to try out. So take a look at this one and let me know, do you think this is a grizzly bear or do you think it's a black bear?
Oh, like overwhelming ears now, overwhelming.
Oh yes, it looks like everyone is in agreement with that we think this is a black bear. And you all are absolutely correct. So of course we have our iconic black colored black bear right here, but I was trying to throw you all off by throwing in a cub that was brown or cinnamon colored. Because if we remember, color is not a good way to tell the difference between the bears. Well, one really easy thing to look for on these bears to tell that it is a black bear is the ears. So you can see that on this bear right here. She's really tall, pointed ears, very different than our grizzlies. Also, if we were to look at this cub over here, you can tell that it does not have a shoulder hump. So kind of the highest point on that bear's body is back towards its rump. And then this bear here also kind of has that nice longer face. It's a little hard to see because it's not turned to the side, but it does have that longer face. So really good ways that we know that that one is a black bear. And whether a bear is a black bear or a grizzly bear here in the park, they all have a lot of different special adaptations or parts of their body or really behaviors that they have to help them survive in a place like Glacier. And one of their biggest adaptations that these bears have is the fact that they are an omnivore. So an animal that's an omnivore, it's going to eat both plants and animals. And that's really good for our bears because if you can eat a wide variety of things throughout the year, it means you have a better chance of finding food. If these bears were just eating fish, they'd really struggle to find all the food that they need throughout the summer months. So our bears have a variety of different things that they're going to eat depending on the time of the year. Our bears will start out in the early season when our wildflowers are starting to bloom. They'll start out eating flowers and grasses, things like that. So this right here is actually a food source for a grizzly bear that they absolutely love. It's what we call a glacier lily, just this tiny little yellow flower. It comes out right after the snow starts to melt. So you'll actually see them blooming right beside the snowpack. And our grizzly bears love to use those big claws to dig up the roots and bulbs and eat the roots and bulbs of these flowers to get the food that they need. Also in springtime, that's a time when they start to eat a little bit more meat. So all of the new animals that are being born, like baby deer, baby elk, that's when it's a little bit easier for them to find that meat that they want to eat because they don't have to work as hard to go after those baby animals as they would for an adult. As the season starts to shift a little bit more into summer, we start to see other food being available for our bears. So things like berries will start to come out and emerge in the middle to late summer. And that's really what bears love to eat. They love to eat berries. They'll eat things like wild strawberry, wild raspberry, service berry, and of course, their favorite berry, huckleberries. So this is a berry that you don't find in many places across the country. You find it in Montana. I think it goes a little bit into Washington, as well goes up into Canada, up into Alberta. But huckleberries are a favorite food for the bears, also people here in the park. Personally, they are one of my favorite berries here in the park. But they're basically kind of like a blueberry, if you all have had blueberries. They're gonna be a little bit more purple. They're a little bit more sour, but they taste pretty similar to a blueberry. So definitely a favorite food source for our bears. And then as we move into fall and those berries start to disappear, the wildflowers start to die off, our bears switch their diet to eating more nuts and seeds, things that are around in the fall. And come fall, this is when they enter a state called hyperphagia. And hyperphagia basically is a time when all they want to do is eat and eat and eat. So our bears are looking to eat as much food as they possibly can and to eat as many calories as they possibly can. So in the fall, our bears, they eat about 20,000 calories a day. A grown adult eats about 2,000 calories a day. It's about 10 times the number of calories, say, your mother or father would eat in a day. And if we were to really try to figure that out in terms of Oreos for us, if we were to eat 20,000 calories worth of Oreos, we'd have to eat about 400 Oreos in a day. Do you think you all could do that? I'm seeing actually lots of heads nodding yes. I think I'd get a really bad stomachache if I tried to eat 400 Oreos in one day. So this is also, that hyperphagia stage is also another great adaptation for our bears because it's allowing them to really pack on those pounds so they have a little bit extra weight to make it through the winter when, of course, our bears hibernate. So for our bears here in the park, when winter comes, it's hard for them to find food. You don't find those grasses, those berries, even those nuts and seed are going to be buried under feet upon feet of snow. So to survive through a time when they can't find a lot of food to eat, our bears will go into hibernation and sleep away the winter months. And our bears enter hibernation typically in about late October into November, and they'll sleep until about March or April. But our bears, they actually don't sleep the entire time. Sometimes if the weather's nice outside, the bears will actually come out of their dens, walk around for a day or two, and then go back to sleep. And we actually found that here this winter. It's been a pretty warm winter for us. And one of the other rangers here in the park said he actually saw grizzly prints on a trail about a week ago. So typically when we think they'd be in hibernation, you never know when they might come out. But when our bears do enter hibernation, they tend to slow their bodies down a little bit. So their bodies are using less calories, burning less fat, so it helps them make it through the winter months. And our bears will hibernate in a variety of different places. Things like our black bears, they tend to hibernate in trees. So they'll climb up a tree, they might find this nice big hole or cavity, and they'll sleep the winter there. And this actually is a photo of a bear that we saw coming out of hibernation right across from the park 2 winters ago. So this black bear chose to hang out and to hibernate in a tree. And we actually got to watch him from a very safe distance. We got to watch him come out and emerge from hibernation. So that was a pretty cool thing to experience. But you'll also find other bears, black bears, grizzly bears as well. They will dig dens. They'll dig that into a hillside and they'll sleep in those dens throughout the winter. And if you notice here, a lot of our bears will go into their dens alone, but they're not going to be coming out of their dens alone. So you'll notice in this one right here that there's a mother bear as well as her cub. And for our bears, they actually have something called delayed implantation. That means our bears don't become pregnant until they go into a den. Why is that a good thing for bears? Well, that's a great thing for the cubs because that means the cubs are born in a safe den that's covered in snow, hidden away from predators. It gives those cubs a few months to get bigger before they have to go out on their own in a somewhat unsafe place where there's other predators around. It also gives them the entirety of a summer to pack on as many pounds as they can before they have to go into their first hibernation. So this delayed implantation, waiting for those bears to get pregnant until they enter their den and then giving birth to those bears in their den is really beneficial for not only mom, but also for those cubs to help them survive a little bit better. And bears, they typically are going to have one to 2 cubs. For grizzlies as well as black bears, you know, you might see the occasional bear with 3 cubs. I remember last year, I think I saw a black bear mom with 3 cubs, but it can be pretty hard for mom to watch over those 3 cubs. So that's kind of why they tend to have less cubs, because it's a lot of work to watch over that many young bears. And at this point, we kind of were able to talk about the differences between both grizzly bears and black bears. We got to talk about some of those special adaptations those bears have to survive. But I think we're now ready to take any of your questions that you might have about bears. Maybe you have questions about Glacier National Park or the United States National Park Service. Feel free to ask.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for that fantastic presentation, Stephanie. That was awesome. And yeah, I should note, to the best of my knowledge, certainly for me, it's the first time we've ever done a session with the National Park Service in the US too. So we're really excited to start and kick off that in a big way. In addition to our 5 classes joining live, we've got at least 3 more on YouTube from Kansas, from Ontario, and from Montana. So Montana class, welcome in. And you guys are close to obviously our park today. And so yes, if you guys want to type in questions in the chat bar on YouTube, please do, and we'll take as many as we can. But that said, let's get started with Miss Vandeloo's class. We're going to head to Ottawa, and if you guys want to kick us off, come on up.
What? With warmer temperatures, will bears hibernate for less time?
Yeah.
That's a great question. So with these warmer temperatures we're experiencing, will bears hibernate for less time? So we have been seeing at different times when our snow starts later in the year that the bears do tend to go into hibernation a little bit later, because without that snow covering food sources, they're still able to find food. That being said, we're not 100% certain what's going to happen with the bears' hibernation patterns as things start to change and start to get a little bit warmer. It's going to depend if things get warm enough and flowers start to emerge earlier in the year, and there are more reliable food sources, bears definitely could come out of hibernation sooner, but we don't really have a lot of data to prove it right now. We're still trying to figure that out. But we definitely have seen bears enter hibernation a little bit later in the season, when the snow starts a little bit later in the year.
Yeah, great question to kick us off. And I love when we address this idea that science is ever much in progress. So all you kids, if you guys want to dive into science, become scientists, even just learn about it. It's always changing. We're always learning more things. That's really exciting. All right, Miss Garner's class, if you guys want to come up and
Ready?
second question, go for it.
Okay, move. See, there's the camera right there. Okay, go ahead and ask your question. Go ahead.
Does the baby cub dig dens or the mama cub dig dens when they're like medium?
So do the baby cubs dig dens as well, or is it just the mom? Or
Ooh,
When they're
that's a good
medium.
question.
When they're medium.
yeah, when they're medium.
So it's mostly going to be like once the mom gives birth to her cubs in the den, and then her cubs come out and they spend the summer with her. For that next winter, they actually will go into the den with mom. Mom will probably do most of the work at digging that den. She could actually go back to the den from last winter as well. The cubs might help her out a little bit with digging. They might help bring some materials in to kind of lay down on a base, because sometimes they'll bring in vegetation to make the ground a little bit more comfy. But most of that work will probably be from mom, because the cubs will not be fully grown yet.
Okay, fantastic. Let's head to Miss Langer's class. If you guys want to come on up, go for it. Yeah.
Okay.
Are the baby cubs born with fur?
Yeah.
Oh, good question. So yep, so those baby cubs are going to have a little bit of fur when they are born. And then as they keep getting bigger, they'll grow more and more fur.
Yeah. So this is interesting, and I wonder if this question was based on the fact that if you see like baby pandas, they're like little, they're naked, they have no fur, they're like little pink blobs. So are these sort of bears don't come out that way at all? Are they bigger, or are they? Yeah.
So I'm not 100% certain how big the bears are when they're born. I'm pretty sure that they are born with a little bit of fur. I mean, nothing too much. Like they're not like the really furry cub we saw, but they do have a little something to them. Mm-hmm.
Very cool. All right, you know what? We're ripping through these. So I'm going to take a quick question from a YouTube class. So Miss Gertson's class, grade 4s in Bueller in Kansas, wanted to ask, what is a fact about Glacier National Park that not many people know? You can share with us today.
Oh, a fact about Glacier that not many
No
people
pressure.
know. Oh, that's a tough one. Oh, there's so many things I could think of.
Okay.
I'd say unless you've come to Glacier National Park, you probably don't know that we still have about 26 named glaciers left in the park. So a lot of people think we either have way more glaciers or we don't really have many glaciers, but we still have about 26 glaciers left in the park, which is pretty cool. We still have lots of other ice as well that's not really big enough to be a glacier, but there's still opportunities to go out and see those glaciers in the park.
And for some of our younger classes that might not have ever seen a glacier or know what one is in their mind, can you explain a little bit about what a glacier is?
Absolutely. So basically, a glacier is just a big sheet of ice. So when you get snow collecting on snow, when that snow starts to press down on each other, it'll actually over a lot of time form ice and form a glacier. And here in Glacier National Park, our definition of glaciers might be a little bit different than other places. We say that a glacier has to be at least 25 acres in size. So does anyone watch football? A few of you do. Awesome. So if you've ever looked at a football stadium or football field, that's about an acre. So imagine 25 football stadiums put together. That would be the size of a glacier, the smallest it could be. A glacier also is going to be about 100 feet deep. So that's going to be if you took two semi-trucks, turn them on their end and stack them together, and then it has to be moving. So when we're talking about a glacier moving, it's not fast. It's not like you and I running or a car driving on the road. It's going to be slowly moving, but glaciers do have to be moving.
Okay, thank you so much, Stephanie. Let's go to Miss Moreno's class. Let's go to Texas. If you guys have one, come on up.
Who's your favorite animal and why?
Ooh, favorite.
Ooh, what is my favorite animal? This is a really good question. And unfortunately, I don't think I have a photo of it right here, but my favorite animal is an animal called a marmot. So have any of you seen a groundhog before? Yeah. A few of you, awesome.
Oh, yeah.
So basically, a marmot looks just like a groundhog, except marmots live really high up in the mountains. So they're just gonna be up high in the mountains. And marmots are actually only awake for about 3 months out of the year. They spend the other months of the year sleeping. So they hibernate just like bears. But why I like marmots so much is because the time that they're awake, all they're doing is eating and lounging in the sun. And I think that sounds like a pretty nice life. Plus they're very fun to watch run around. So I think they're my favorite animal in the park.
Fantastic. Mr. Hill's class from Keswick, Ontario on YouTube wanted to ask, what was the bear doing with its tongue out when it was coming out of hibernation? Or maybe it was just a goofy bear, we don't know. But is there a reason its tongue was out?
Oh, gotcha, for a bear with its tongue out. I think in that photo, I think he honestly might have just been yawning because we have some different clips of him when he's coming out and he was yawning a lot, probably trying to wake himself up. But there were other clips where he was licking parts of the tree. So he may have been looking for insects that were on the tree, just little things he could eat around there. But I think that clip may have just been him yawning.
Fantastic. All right, Miss Langdale's class, let's come to you guys. If you guys have a question, come on up.
What if the mom dies versus hibernation doing birth?
Yeah, do the babies still survive or what happens then?
So that's a great question. Unfortunately, if mom were to pass away after she gave birth to her cubs, those cubs would not make it because they are really reliant on mom's milk to be able to grow and get strong enough to get out of her den. If she were to pass away, no other bears or really anyone can step in because they don't really know where those dens are. They're so well hidden. So those bears wouldn't have the food that they need to make it through.
Yeah. Is there a time when bears do leave their mothers, like either black bears or grizzly bears? When do they leave mom and they're able to fend for themselves?
Yeah, so typically black bears, they're going to stay with mom for about a year, sometimes a year and a half. After that, mom will kick them aside and they'll be out on their own. For grizzly bears, it's more like 2 to 3 years they'll be with mom. So they'll stay with mom a little bit longer, and then after that, they can move on and kind of manage for themselves.
So think of how lucky humans are. You guys, imagine if you had to leave home at 2 years old and just fend for yourselves. It'd be pretty difficult, I think. Unless you had all those Oreos to, fuel yourself. That would have been good. All right, another quick question from our YouTube group. So Miss Cheryl's class, our Montana class, joining us today. They wanted to ask a bunch of things. Why do bears hibernate, Stephanie?
Oh, perfect. So why do bears hibernate? Really, why does any animal hibernate? And why animals are going to hibernate, and especially bears, is because in the wintertime, when there's so much snow out, it's very hard for them to find food. And if they're out and about trying to find food, they're burning a lot of fat and a lot of calories. So it would be really easy for a bear who needs to eat a lot of food typically since they're such a big animal. It'd be really easy for bears to start losing a lot of weight if they stay out and active in the winter when they're not able to find enough food to really kind of make up for all the energy that they're using. So instead, bears are going to go hibernate, dig a den, slow their bodies down. So they drop their body temperature, they lower their heart rate. So their body uses less calories to kind of stay alive. And then they're able to live off the extra fat on there and burn less calories to then make it through to the spring when we find more food for them to eat.
Fantastic. All right, let's do a second round of questions. We're whipping through these guys. This is great. So Miss Vandaloo, if you guys want to come back up, go for it.
How do bears catch fish? Yeah.
Yeah.
How do bears catch fish? That's a great question. Our bears here in the park, they don't eat a whole lot of fish. They'll only eat fish when fish are spawning. So basically, when fish are reproducing, having young, it's a little bit easier for them to get into one area to catch those fish. A lot of times I've seen the bears, anyone has seen videos of bears in Alaska, they kind of will dip their head into waterfalls and grab them with their mouth. So they grab them with their mouth. In some instances, they may use their paw to help them out a little bit to catch the fish. But typically, I'd say for the most part, as long as it's easy fishing, they'll probably just dip their head in there and then pull out a fish.
Yeah. I always like when it's trying to explain to kids, trying to imagine catching your food with your face. It's not easy to do. It's not something you'd even do with your Oreo. You use your hands, but bears and other animals get to do it a little bit differently, which is great.
Absolutely.
No fishing rods though, never.
Nope.
Miss Garner's class, if you guys want to come up, go for it.
Okay, go ahead.
How strong is a grizzly bear and a black bear?
How strong?
How strong are they? So I don't really have like a number to really say just how strong they are or how much muscle they have. But I have seen grizzly bears flip over a log, like a full-blown tree that's been knocked over. They can rip apart trees. They can knock over trees. So definitely a grizzly bear is going to be a little bit stronger than a black bear because they tend to be bigger. Grizzly bears tend to be more about 300 to 500 pounds here at Glacier. Black bears are going to be more about 150 pounds, typically. So grizzly bears are going to be stronger than a black bear as long as they're bigger, and they can be pretty forceful with those big claws and that big muscle mass. They can move trees, essentially.
Cool. All right, a YouTube question. I love this from Mr. Hill's class. What is your job at Glacier National Park, and what do you get to do in a day?
Ooh, that's a great question. So in the wintertime, my job is an education ranger. So most days I will have groups from local schools come up to the park and we'll take students out on snowshoe hikes around the park. So we spend about 4 hours with them exploring the park, learning a little bit about winter here in Glacier. And then after that, we'll come back and we do lots of different projects. So one of my big projects is working on our distance learning program. So getting to talk to students across the country about this place. So that's basically a typical day for me. I also work one day on the weekends and I get to interact with visitors coming into the park. So people visiting from all across this country, all across the world, really coming to the park. And I get to answer their questions and then take them on snowshoe hikes as well.
Fantastic. Great question, guys. I love when they get personal. Miss Langer's class, if you guys want to come in and ask a question, go for it.
Hello, my name is Avery.
How many bears live in the park?
Ooh, good question. So how many bears live in Glacier? So we have figured this out because scientists went out and they actually set up what we call hair traps. And these hair traps are basically, you put a little bit of barbed wire in a tree. And when a bear walks by, bears love to rub against trees because it leaves behind a scent. And that tells other bears, hey, someone came through here before me. So bears will rub up against a tree. There's a little bit of barbed wire there and it pulls their fur off. And then with that fur, our scientists will take that back and they'll run DNA tests on it to figure out how many different bears were at these trees. And over the years, when they've done these tests, they've found that we have close to about 300 or so grizzly bears and about 600 black bears. So we're close to almost 1,000 bears here at Glacier National Park. So I think our scientists said we're close to capacity. So we're almost too many bears in this park. So we have a lot of bears.
Very cool. All right, we're going to take a few more questions. Miss Bauer's class, grade 5s and 6s, joined us from Ottawa, Ontario, halfway through. So I'm going to give them a chance to come on in if they have a question. And Miss Bauer's group, come on up. Hey guys.
We actually, because we just came in right now, we'll just listen in.
No worries. Okay. Well, thank you so much for coming in, and really appreciate you guys being here. Miss Moreno's class, if you guys have a question, come on up. Check in.
How many times does the mother bear give birth every time they go to hibernation?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's a good question. How many times does mom give birth when she goes through hibernation? So it's going to be every few years that a bear will give birth. So for a black bear, since the cubs tend to stick with them for about a year and a half, it's probably going to be about every 2 years a black bear will have cubs. So she'll go into hibernation once, have cubs. The next hibernation, she'll still be with her other cubs, so she's not going to give birth. It'll be the year after. For our grizzly bears, since they typically stick with mom for about 2 to 3 years, it's every about 3 to 4 years that she'll be giving birth, because she has to wait until she raises her other cubs before she has new cubs.
Fantastic question, guys. All right, I want to pass along a question from Miss Cheryl's class, which is a great question in general, and I'm surprised we haven't got it any sort of variation on it. How often do bear attacks occur in the park? And is bear attack something that people have to worry about in general?
Gotcha. So here at Glacier, you definitely want to be bear aware when you're in the park. So we always stress to every visitor that you need to properly store your food. So that means if you're in a campground, a picnic area, we actually have food storage lockers you can lock up food at, or you can lock it up in your vehicle. It's still safe to do here. We also tell people that when they're out on the trails exploring this place, that they want to make lots of noise. So yelling, whistling, loud clapping, singing are really good ways to make noise to tell bears, hey, I'm walking through your neighborhood, just so you don't surprise them. And then we also really encourage people to carry bear spray with them. So it's basically like really strong mace that you can use to protect yourself from bears. And that's just to make sure that you're staying safe, but also keeping the bears safe here in the park. You know, I'd say every summer, we probably have a few people spraying bear spray at bears. Whether they're spraying it because a bear is actually coming at them or they just see a bear off in the distance kind of varies. We honestly have like a bear attack a person every few years, but it's normally just very minor injuries. And it's normally just someone surprised a bear. And when bears are surprised, they try to protect themselves.
Right.
In the park's history itself, for grizzly bears, we've been a park since 1910, so over 100 years. And since then, we've only had 10 fatal attacks with grizzlies. So really not many attacks for how many people come to a place like Glacier.
Yeah, fantastic. And I always love when we get that question, because we can highlight that if you respect animals, if you understand that they are a huge animal, it is their habitat. And if you take the necessary precautions and respect them, you're unlikely to ever be in a situation where an attack is likely to happen. So we always like to stress that here with exploring by the seat of your pants. All right, we're going to take 2 more questions, 1 more live. So Miss Langdale's class, if you want to finish us off for live classes, come on up.
Why do bears push down trees?
Why do bears push down trees, Stephanie?
Oh, why would a bear push down a tree? So for our bears, especially if it's a dead trees tend to have lots of insects in them. Bears love to eat bugs and insects because they tend to actually have a lot of calories. So bears will like to rip into trees or push down a dead tree to be able to get in and to get those insects to eat. So really most reasons why they'd want to tear down a tree is to find that food that's within it.
Awesome. All right. And then I love this question from Miss Gertson's class online. And that is, what advice would you give to a kid who thinks your job looks amazing?
Ooh, so my advice would be to just get out and explore more places where you see rangers. So that could be the United States National Parks or some of the Parks Canada. Up in Canada, those are lovely as well. And just try to talk to some of the rangers and see what their jobs are like. The reason I went into this job is because my parents took me to so many of the US national parks and I saw rangers doing this job and I thought it looked so cool. And then try to figure out if you want to work for a national park, what do you think you should study and learn more about to kind of help you get there? So I actually got my college degree in geology, studying rocks, because I was interested in rocks. you know, Glacier, we have these mountains made out of rocks. So that's something that really helped me get this job because I knew about rocks and how these mountains might form. And also another good thing is if you are close to either a national park or maybe even a state park, places where rangers work, volunteer at some of those places because it really helps you get your foot in the door. If you're volunteering, then people know your name and it's a little bit easier to get a job working as a ranger.
Outstanding. One thing I like to stress too, so many people highlight going out in nature, and that's the biggest thing we like to share, but go to the library as well. For all our classes, you guys have school libraries, you have public libraries, you can learn more about anything that you're interested in there, whether online, in books, resources, and more. And speaking of resources, when we're done this session, I'm going to share a lot of links that you can find out more about Glacier National Park, about national park systems near you, and just get excited and engaged. Stephanie, this has been really, really fantastic. And so what we do at the end of every presentation is I'm going to demute the mic of all our classes. And so boys and girls, if you guys could get ready to join me in saying a huge thank you to Stephanie for joining us in Montana today. You are all now demuted. Go for it. Thank you so much, guys.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much. What a fantastic presentation. Great classes today, guys. You guys were so enthusiastic. I love it. Stephanie, thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, of course. Thanks so much for tuning in, everyone. It was great to talk to all of you.
All right. Have a wonderful rest